devotion, dedication. Also, she's got maybe she's too humble to say, too modest to say, but she's got a great fighting spirit, no doubt. She's a warrior, goes out there and doesn't give a single game. Actually, she has probably the most bagels of anyone in women's tennis. It speaks about how seriously and professionally she's taking every single point and game on the court. So that's very admirable. I really like that kind of champion spirit and mindset.
It started as a simple on-court disagreement, but within hours, it exploded into one of the most heated controversies tennis has seen all year. Fans were stunned, players were divided, and the entire situation took a turn no one expected. Because right when the tension between Coco Gauff and Belinda Bencic hit its peak, a surprising voice stepped into the chaos, someone whose opinion carries more weight in tennis than almost anyone alive. And what he said didn't just shift the narrative, it shook the entire tennis community. But the real twist, his support didn't go to the player most people assumed. And once you hear what actually happened behind the scenes, you'll understand why this moment has become the center of global attention. The controversy began over something so minor that most players would have ignored it. But in this match, tensions were already simmering. During a tight rally, Belinda Bencic abruptly accused Coco Gauff of being disrespectful and trying to influence the flow of the game. It wasn't a dramatic outburst, just a sharp accusation delivered at the worst possible moment.
Oh yeah, I would be lying to you if I said I had no reservations. Obviously, you guys know who I am and the things I speak about, and I was pretty much on almost every player call that I could make.
Ready to serve. They don't need to cheer. No one's talking to you. She's talking to me, okay? I haven't started. Your team is chanting. I'm too old for these mind games, okay?
Coco, known for her calm presence, tried to explain that she was only speaking up to ensure a point was counted correctly. Instead of diffusing the situation, the clarification made things worse. Bencic doubled down, muttering comments, gesturing at the referee, and painting Coco as someone trying to gain an unfair advantage. The atmosphere shifted instantly. Fans felt it. The stadium felt it. Even social media picked up on the tension. This wasn't a typical mid-match disagreement. This was something deeper, something personal.
Coco responded, "There's nobody in the stadium. It's been so respectful. I treat your team with respect. We treat each other with respect. The ball was a drop shot winner."
And as intense as that moment was, the real escalation was still coming, because what happened next changed everything. What happened next took the tension from uncomfortable to undeniable. As the match continued, the disagreement between Coco and Belinda boiled over into a direct confrontation that caught everyone off guard. Bencic pushed her accusation even further, insisting that Coco was intentionally trying to sway the referee and manipulate the momentum of the match. It wasn't just a complaint, it was a claim that struck at Coco's integrity, something she has always fiercely protected. Coco didn't snap back. Instead, she responded with clarity and composure, telling Bencic, "Nobody in the stadium has been disrespectful. I treat your team with respect. We treat each other with respect." The ball was a drop shot winner. Her words weren't aggressive, just firm, confident, and impossible to dismiss. Yet Bencic continued pressing the idea that Coco was in the wrong, creating an awkward, heated energy that rippled across the stadium.
Rally,
Fans watching
Belinda
at home
Bencic
were
abruptly
stunned.
accused Coco
Clips
Gauff of
spread
being calm
instantly
presence,
across social
tried to
media,
explain that she was
with
only
thousands
speaking. The
debating
atmosphere
who was
shifted
right.
instantly.
And
Fans
while the
felt
cameras
it.
focused
the
on the
stadium felt it.
exchange,
Even
something
disrespectful.
else was
I
happening
treat your
behind
team
the
with
scenes.
respect. We
Something
treat each
that
other.
would
Just when it seemed
completely
like the
flip the
argument
narrative.
between Coco
Because
Djokovic
someone
made it
much
clear
bigger,
that Coco hadn't
someone
done a
far
single
more
thing wrong.
influential
In his
was
exactly
watching
what
this
any serious
unfold.
competitor would
And
do.
he wasn't
even
impressed
dismissed
by
Bane.
what he saw.
For fans,
And when he
this was
finally
jaw-dropping.
spoke up,
His
the
decision to
entire
back
tennis
Coco
world
wasn't just
stopped
unexpected.
to listen.
It was
She's got maybe she's too humble to say, too modest to say, but she's got a great fighting spirit, no doubt. She's a warrior, goes out there and doesn't give a single game. Actually, she has probably the most bagels of anyone in women's tennis.
Just when it seemed like the argument between Coco G and Belinda Bencic would fade away as another heated on-court moment, the entire situation took a shocking turn. Out of nowhere, one of the most influential figures in tennis, Novak Djokovic, stepped into the conversation, and he didn't tiptoe around his opinion. He went straight to the point, publicly defending Coco in a way that immediately shifted the narrative. Djokovic made it clear that Coco hadn't done a single thing wrong. In his eyes, she was simply protecting the fairness of the match, speaking up only when necessary and doing exactly what any serious competitor would do. He even dismissed Bencic's accusations as completely unjust, indirectly calling out the tactic of trying to rattle an opponent through exaggerated claims. For fans, this was jaw-dropping. Djokovic rarely inserts himself into dramas between other players, especially when it involves a rising star and a seasoned veteran. His decision to back Coco wasn't just unexpected, it was a statement, a message that he wasn't buying the version of events being pushed onto her. And because of who he is, his words immediately carried weight. Overnight, people who had been unsure suddenly took a second look at the situation. Clips were replayed, comments analyzed, and sentiment shifted sharply in G's favor. But Djokovic's commentary wasn't just a passing remark. It added fuel to an already complicated situation, exposing cracks that had been forming long before this match even began. And once he spoke up, there was no turning back, because his support would end up changing everything about how the story unfolded.
When the tension hit its peak, most players would have cracked under the pressure. But Coco Gauff didn't just hold her ground, she flipped the entire match upside down. After dropping the first set and absorbing every bit of energy Bencic tried to weaponize against her, Coco settled into a different mode entirely. Her focus sharpened, her footwork tightened, and suddenly every swing carried a sense of purpose that even the commentators couldn't ignore. What looked like the beginning of a meltdown for most athletes became the start of one of Coco's most composed comebacks of the season. Point by point, she dismantled the momentum Bencic thought she had built. Every time Belinda tried to disrupt the rhythm with comments or gestures, Coco answered with cleaner shots, louder winners, and a level of maturity far beyond her age. She didn't match the energy, she eclipsed it. By the second set, the crowd could feel the shift. By the third, it was undeniable. Coco had taken control of the match, the moment, and even the narrative that Bencic had attempted to twist. But the victory wasn't just physical. It was emotional, mental, and symbolic. Coco showed she could take hostility, pressure, and subtle attempts to shake her confidence and turn all of it into fuel. And the best part, she didn't celebrate with arrogance or pettiness. She walked to the net, handled herself with grace, and made it clear afterward that she had no intention of disrespecting anyone. She simply refused to let anyone derail her. And while fans were still processing Coco's powerful turnaround, the tennis world began to notice something deeper. This wasn't the first time she had faced unfair treatment and stood her ground. Long before the clash with Bencic, Coco Gauff had already shown the world that she wasn't afraid to speak up when something felt wrong on the court. One of the clearest examples came during her intense match against Laura Siegemund at the US Open, a moment that instantly went viral because of how blatantly unfair the situation seemed. Throughout the match, Siegemund kept slowing down play, taking long pauses between points and disrupting the flow in ways that pushed the limits of the rules. Yet the referee stayed silent, refusing to call out the delays even as they piled up. Fans watching were confused, commentators were stunned, and Coco, who had stayed patient far longer than most players would, finally reached her breaking point. She confronted the referee directly and told her exactly what everyone else was thinking. The rules weren't being enforced fairly. The crowd erupted the second she spoke. They cheered her for standing up for herself, for calling out the obvious bias, and for refusing to let the situation slide. Even though speaking out like that can shake a player's composure, Coco didn't flinch. She made it clear that consistency mattered, that respect mattered, and that she wasn't going to let a slow play tactic derail her. And the most powerful part, the longer the match went on, the more the crowd's support pushed Coco forward. Every shout, every clap, every bit of energy in the stadium only fueled her confidence. When Siegemund later broke down in the press room claiming she had been wronged, the narrative didn't land the way she hoped. Fans weren't buying it. They'd already seen what happened with their own eyes, and they knew Coco had simply asked for the fairness every player deserves. This entire moment became another example of something larger, that Coco Gauff wasn't just a talented player, but someone who refuses to let unfair treatment slide no matter who's on the other side of the net. And it's exactly this history of standing her ground that made Novak Djokovic's support hit even harder when he entered the conversation. Once the match ended and the dust settled, the spotlight shifted from the court to the conversation surrounding it. And suddenly, Belinda Bencic found herself facing a wave of pressure she didn't expect. What initially seemed like a simple complaint had snowballed into a narrative she could no longer control. Djokovic's support for Coco didn't just influence the public's perception, it completely flipped the momentum of the conversation. Fans began questioning Bencic's behavior, analysts replayed the exchange frame by frame, and the tennis world took sides almost instantly. While some tried to defend Belinda, the majority believed she had crossed a line and allowed her emotions to dictate her actions. On the other hand, Coco's reputation only strengthened. The way she handled the accusations with calmness, maturity, and an unshaken focus became the centerpiece of the entire storyline. Commentators praised her poise, fans applauded her resilience, and players quietly acknowledged her growth. The contrast between the two players couldn't have been clearer. One seemed overwhelmed by frustration, while the other rose above it, refusing to let chaos dictate her performance. But the real shift happened behind the scenes, as coaches, analysts, and insiders started discussing how this controversy might impact future matchups and reputations. Bencic now carried the weight of being seen as the one who overreached, the one who let a moment of frustration turn into an unnecessary conflict. Coco, meanwhile, emerged from the situation not only as the better player that day, but as someone who proves she knows how to navigate pressure both physically and mentally. And with Djokovic's powerful endorsement hanging in the air, the narrative only grew stronger. Coco hadn't just been defended, she had been validated. When the dust finally began to settle, something much larger came into focus. This controversy wasn't just about one heated exchange or a single disagreement between two athletes. It exposed the fragile balance of narratives, perception, and power that shaped the modern tennis world. The way fans immediately picked sides, the way commentators shifted their tone once Djokovic spoke up, and the way social media turned a routine match into a global debate all revealed how quickly the truth can get buried under emotion, pressure, and personal bias. Djokovic's involvement didn't just defend Coco, it forced everyone to reevaluate how easily a story can be twisted, especially when frustration or competitiveness pushes a player to say something they later regret. At the same time, the situation highlighted how reputation plays a huge role in how players are treated. Coco's history of composure, fairness, and maturity made her defense believable, while Bencic's escalating comments and attempts to reframe the narrative only added more fuel to the backlash. It became a reminder that in a sport where every moment is broadcasted and every reaction becomes a headline, a single misunderstanding can snowball into something massive. And with tensions rising, relationships shifting, and a new spotlight on fairness in officiating, one thing has become clear. The impact of this moment will be felt long after the match itself fades from memory. Looking back at everything that unfolded, it's clear this wasn't just another courtside misunderstanding. It became one of the defining storylines of the season. What started as a brief spark between Coco Gauff and Belinda Bencic grew into a full-scale controversy that forced fans, players, and even legends of the sport to pay attention. Coco's calm under pressure, her willingness to speak up, and her ability to shift the entire momentum of a match showed a level of maturity far beyond her years. And when Novak Djokovic stepped in, it didn't just validate her actions, it reshaped the entire conversation. His words exposed how quickly narratives can twist and how easily a player can be misrepresented when emotions run high. For Coco, this moment strengthened her reputation as someone who refuses to be shaken no matter how chaotic things get. For Bencic, it created a wave of scrutiny she never expected. And for the tennis world, it was a reminder of how thin the line is between tension and turmoil. With the season still unfolding and rivalries only getting sharper, one thing is certain: this saga is far from over, and the next chapter might be even more intense than the last.